This wasn't all. They say that there have been little people long before this, when Yun Wolos was a young man. That is all. Sikwanin. And this story reminds me of some things that I've experienced. I haven't seen lanterns, but I've seen lights in the woods. And they were down near the ground, but they were moving around, splitting into 6 lights and then coming back into 1 or 2. And I couldn't see what was carrying them. It didn't quite look like flashlights. And I've heard of others seeing lights out in the woods when there's nobody there. And sometimes it looks like somebody with a headlamp, but and it happens at night. And I'm hearing that it's not all that uncommon. You just have to spend enough time in the woods at night. And then I've heard talking, like chattering in the woods as well. And if you just sit out in the woods next to a campfire, out in the middle of nowhere, not at some public campground, but just down some logging roads, these things happen sometimes. It's happened more than once. So I like these stories, because it reminds me of some of my own experiences. Okay, the next story. And I apologize for saying some of the Cherokee words incorrectly. I'm just giving it my best shot. Uedasat and the little people. I'll tell you this short one. This was told to me by Uedasat. He said that in the valley near his home there was a deep hole, and that is where these people with magic powers lived. I sometimes go there, he used to say. We used to get together, he told me. They have a beautiful place to live. They used to have dances with music. Sometimes I used to pass there at night, and they were dancing, and I could hear beautiful music. Sometimes I would just pass by, and other times I would join them, the old man used to say. And then the next story. The little person of Sugar Mountain. My father told me this story. He said that he and his grandmother lived together over there at Sugar Mountain, over there across Caney Creek. About 2 miles from where I live on the road is called Sugar Mountain. At one time my grandmother said my father had told her when water was scarce, about halfway up Sugar Mountain was a spot that was always damp, as if there was a spring there. She said, he used to say, my grandmother dug out the place. It was very soft digging, said my father, who was a boy at that time. I was playing around nearby while my grandmother was digging, hoping there would be some water there, he said. So after a while, when she had dug as far as her arm could reach, water gushed out, and it overflowed. And when she put her hand in again to scoop out the soil, I heard some whooping, my father said. The whoop was very loud. There was a boy named Ugalog, the son of Kodesk, who lived there. We used to whoop to each other often in the past, said my father. Ugalog is whooping at you. Whoop back at him, my grandmother said to me, he said. But when I at last decided where the whooping was coming from, I decided it was from the hole where the water was coming from, my father used to say. And I told my grandmother that it was not Ugalog who was whooping, but it is down where you are sticking your hand in. That's where the whooping is coming from, I told her, said my late father. When my grandmother listened, she decided it was coming from the hole, she said. Yes, it is. It's a little person who is whooping, she said. Let's leave. So we ran away, my late father said. Finally we arrived home, he said. And that's the way it was in those days. Those events were related to me by these two persons, Uedasad and his father, and I thought I would give you these short accounts. People say that Uedasad had magic powers. They used to say that he could predict the future very quickly. That's all I know. That is all. Siquanid. And now here again, this whooping. I've heard that people would whoop to their neighbor and let them know they're home, but out in the woods, sometimes my friends and I will go looking for Sasquatch, and you don't really look for Sasquatch. That's just something you say. Usually you just you make a fire, sit down, and tell stories, and the Sasquatch finds us. And they'll push over a tree and break some branches, and then you know they're there. But you'll hear them whoop sometimes. And I took my kids camping last Labor Day weekend, and there was a lot of fires in the mountains last summer. So I think the Sasquatch and other whatever else it was were down low in kind of the farming communities, and we were out near Packwood, Randall, along the Cowlitz River here in Washington, and I heard this whoopings, like things whooping to each other, just a whoop like that, and I'd hear one across the river, and then one behind us. I'd hear one upriver, one downriver, and so forth. And I told my kids, "Hey, listen, do you hear that? Does that sound like any animal you ever heard of?" And they agreed. It sounded like the whooping you hear that Sasquatch do. And then now I'm reading little people doing it. So I started whooping back, and then they'd answer me, and my son, he wanted me to stop. It was scaring him. So I stopped for a while. Maybe a half hour went by, and then finally my son says, "Do it again, do it again." He started saying that it was safe and that it was kind of fun. And that was a fun camping trip. So here's the next story. An encounter with the little people. We made plans to go fishing, and when we started, we went down this road. We went some distance where there was a deep pool, and that's where we fished. One of the young boys that went with us kept looking back in the direction from which we had come. I was sitting here, indicating in the middle. The boy was sitting here, indicating to one side, and the other person here, indicating to the other side. I didn't see anything, but the boy kept looking back. After the boy had turned around several times, I turned around and looked, and I saw 3 people just this high, indicating about 3 feet, standing there. 2 were women, for they had on dresses. One was a man, for he had on a pair of pants. The man had his hand on a tree. I'm sure the tree is still there. I kept turning to watch them. Then the second time I looked, they had started walking in that direction into the woods. The boy stopped turning around then, and when he got home, I asked him why he had been looking back so much. He said, "There was somebody behind us talking, and when I turned, I didn't see anybody. Then I would hear them talking again." I told him that there were 3 persons looking at us from behind us. The boy didn't say anything. He didn't say whether he saw anything or not. He was silent. That is all. Gano. And so that's just another experience of, you hear this chatter in the woods. And I'm not the only one. My friends have heard the same thing. And usually we've thought it was Sasquatch, but you never know. And then the next story is a tale of the deer people. And I've already recorded this one. I think it's episode 10, and it's a wonderful story. So we'll skip ahead to the next story. Now this one begins inside information. Quite a few of the Eastern Band Cherokee incantations that have been translated and made available to inspection through publication deal with attracting or retaining the affection of someone of the opposite sex, or with the nullification of the charms of a rival. To the best of our knowledge, no parallel study has ever been made among the Oklahoma division of the tribe. The language of these charms, bristling with the most formidable of archaisms, sometimes rises to towering poetic heights, but is also sometimes all but unintelligible to the laity. We have here two tales of love charms obtained directly from the supernatural source. And I still see some of this today in tribal members from other tribes, talking about magic or spells a little bit. And I just thought it was amusing that I had a former girlfriend accuse me of putting a spell on her. And I couldn't tell if she was serious or joking around or what. But it was, I just found that amusing. So I think I'll always remember that one. Anyhow. Moving on to the story. And I don't. I'll interrupt for a second. I don't mean to sound critical or making fun. I believe in that stuff too, but I never intentionally put on any kind of a spell. So I just thought that story was kind of amusing. So moving on to this story, the little person of the hunter. These people that lived long ago, called the little people, were very powerful. They say that they could transform themselves into other people. They had only to see a person that they wanted to be, and they could change themselves into that person. If we saw them, and they saw us, they could transform themselves into us. They say that little people are very much like real people. The women are beautiful with long hair. Once upon a time, there was a young man who was a hunter. While this young man was sitting in the shade, watching for squirrels, he heard some singing away down in the valley. When he heard this singing, he turned and looked all around him, but he didn't see anyone. He saw a grapevine swinging and kept hearing the singing. He wanted to see who was doing it, causing the grapevine to swing and doing the singing. Finally, much later, he saw a small man sitting upon the grapevine. He was grasping the grapevine and singing. Now this is that this little person had said he sang. And I'm not going to try and sing this, but I wish I could hear it. If it's recorded somewhere, I'd love to hear it. That's what the little person said when he sang. The young squirrel hunter was told to sit down and learn this song. You must say this whenever there is a young woman who is indifferent toward you. You must sing this song that I have sung for you, and you must think of the young woman's name. Early in the morning when the sun comes up, when it is very large and red, you must face the sun and sing the song. You can't fail to get the woman you want if you will sing this song that I have taught you. That is what the squirrel hunter was told. That's how the hunter learned that these little people were so powerful. If we but see them, they can bewitch us, and all the more so if they have just sung this song. That's what happened to this young hunter. He was put under an enchantment. He saw the supernatural being that he desired to see. That to be an enchanter himself was what he was taught to do. All the adults after his time taught this same magic to the young folk. All the young folk began to work this magic on each other. Much later they lost this magic. The older folks said that the little people caused them to forget the magic, that the little people took it back. My father told me that. Tzali Uskazit was my father. That's all I know. One can tell very interesting things about these little people that were told by our forefathers. These little people were very aniktana, sikwanid. And then here's another story. Tsukud Salala. That's the name of the story. There was something that could fly that was very much like little people called Tsukud Salala, which was a bird. This bird, whose name was Tsutsutsk Salala, Sorry, I'll try one more time. Sukut salam.